Wow. How's this for beautiful, eh? This river I'm standing on is called the Bow River. It runs from the Rockies all the way into Calgary. I got to be a little careful today. I just come down a bit of a cliff here and there's quite a few bear tracks. I just want to make sure that obviously I keep an eye open and keep my bear spray close. It's a beautiful day. It's about, right now it's probably about 10 degrees, which would be about 46, 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyhow, I thought I would pull over, share an experience with you. This one here is simply amazing. You're going to love this one. You know, I've talked a couple of times about coincidences and how we have all these little coincidences occur in our lives, and oftentimes they just seem to all add up to something perfect. And we wonder afterwards, boy, I can't believe how that worked out, because if it wouldn't have, then this wouldn't have happened, and then this wouldn't have happened, and this is kind of one of those stories right now. And this will kind of explain why I don't believe so much in coincidences. I believe that coincidences in a lot of cases are just God's way of letting us know that He's keeping an eye on us. So, here we go. When Don and Brenda Herbert stopped at a church yard sale one Saturday in October of 2014, they had no idea that it would take them on a journey that would save 2 lives. It started when Don heard music coming from inside the church. And for me, being a gospel singer, that was like saying, "Come on in," said Don. There he met Pastor Tim Jones, who shared Don's love for gospel music. Tim explained, "He got ready to leave and I said, 'Don, you know we're getting ready to have a revival. Would you like to come in and sing with us?' Don says, "I went to a yard sale with my wife, never expecting to find anything, and ended up coming out with a date to sing. But there was something else that Don didn't share with his new friend. 6 months earlier, he'd had a liver transplant after suffering with chronic illness for over 12 years. And the transplant had been successful, but now Don's kidneys had begun to fail, and he needed another transplant. Don didn't worry too much about it though. I had a very strong faith that God was going to take care of me, no matter what happened," he says. Belinda's faith, however, was quickly eroding, and had been for years. She said, "I felt so alone. I was becoming more and more depressed. I was more discouraged than Don had ever been. He was the one who had kept his faith." 2 weeks later, she realized she could no longer bear the weight on her own. Belinda cried out to God. "I said, 'Lord, you told me that you wouldn't give me any more than I could handle.' And He said, 'That's not really what I told you. Because if you could always handle everything, then why would you ever need me? So you need to release everything to me. Give me your burden and let me carry them.' And so I did." The next day, Don went for a checkup at Duke Medical Center. There, the doctors discovered he had blockages in his heart and needed immediate surgery. But his weakened kidneys wouldn't survive the procedure, and Don would have to go on dialysis until he found a donor, which could take up to 5 to 7 years. I said, "Wow, I can't believe that God brought me this far through my major transplant, and now here I am facing something like this." Later, Belinda sent out a desperate plea on Facebook. "The Lord spoke to me and said, 'Put it on Facebook, put it out there, put it on social media. Ask somebody, because if you don't ask, you will never receive.'" Belinda wrote, "It is so hard to ask something so tremendous and so humbling, but I want the man that I love to live a long life, and I want to grow old with him." Don had over 500 friends on Facebook, and I thought, surely somebody will see this. Somebody has to. That person was Pastor Tim. By then, he and Don had become friends on Facebook. The thing that really tugged at my heart was in the post she said, "I love him. We've been together this long. He's my best friend, and I can't imagine going throughout life without my best friend by my side." And I remember I got tears in my eyes and I thought, wow, what a thing to put on Facebook. Tim called Belinda right away. I told Belinda, "I'm not calling you to be a hero or to give you false hope, but I believe God is showing me something, and I would like to try and help in some way." And I said, even up to, and then I just kind of let it slip, even up to possibly being the kidney donor. So there's coincidence number one. Belinda said he was the first one that answered the post that he would be the one, because if God told him to answer, then how could it not be so? The two families talked about it, and after much prayer, Tim decided to donate his kidney to his new friend. Tim says, God said, hey, there's a plan. I've got a plan for you, and you say you have faith in me, then step out on your faith and let me do the rest. And I never doubted. Don responded, I said, wow, this gentleman is thinking about giving me a kidney, and I just met him a couple of weeks ago. I said, God's pretty awesome, but is this for real? Still, there was only a 1 in 20,000 chance of Tim being a match. And what do you suspect happened here? After weeks of exhausted testing, the results came back. Mr. Jones, I've got great news for you. You are a direct match for Don Hibbert, said Tim. It was like, wow. And I remember calling and they were off the charts happy. Belinda was crying. So at that point, it was just a matter of when are we going to schedule the surgery. Doctors at Duke Medical Center first performed a heart catheterization on Don. Then a week later, on March 9th, 2015, the two men went into surgery. The transplant was a total success, but there was another life saved that day. And here's another coincidence. While doctors were operating on Tim, they discovered something that undetected would have been fatal for him. Tim said, they told me, wow, what an amazing story. You had an aneurysm which did not affect the kidney, but if it had gone undetected, it would have ruptured and it would have killed you. Within a couple of days, news of the perfect match was widespread. Today, Don and Tim are doing great. They often minister together to share their story of God's goodness and, of course, their love for gospel music. If anybody doubts this story, I say, this just goes to show you who God is and why we're supposed to obey him, said Tim. I was the one who benefited from this. Don got the kidney, but I got the Lord, said Belinda. Don summed it up. I stood back in awe of how God can work. With doing something like this, how he directed me to a yard sale on a Saturday to meet a pastor that would be willing to give me a kidney, and that not only would he be a perfect match, but also that by donating it, it would also save his life. We should never doubt the plans or the grace of God. Okay, so how do you explain all the little miracles contained in that short experience? Tom meets Tim just before he finds out that he needs a kidney. Tim is willing to donate one of his kidneys, which is a perfect match. And then during the operation, they find out that Tim has an aneurysm that would have killed him, which he would never have found out about if he hadn't donated a kidney in the first place. I just love stories like this. Well, I am going to be heading down the highway. I don't know if I'll stop again, maybe if I find a nice enough spot. But you have a wonderful day, and may God continue to bless you and yours. Bye now.